Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Shalane Stanley Mitchell from the British-Ghanaian Lawyers Union, and I'll be moderating tonight's event. As we celebrate Black History Month, this year's theme, Standing Firm in Power and Pride, reminds us of the resilience, strength, and progress within our community. A big thank you to our incredible guest speaker, Sharon Thomas, founder and director of the Black Council Forum, and our wonderful host, Michelle Addo. We'll have a quick and brief Q&A at the end, so please feel free to drop your questions in the chat throughout the session. Thank you all for joining us. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Shalane, for that wonderful introduction. I'm here today with Sharon Thomas, the founder of Black Council Forum, as Shalane said. And yeah, Sharon, it's wonderful to have you here, and we're very excited and on behalf of the British-Ghanaian Union Lawyers community. So yeah, we will welcome you here today.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Thanks for inviting me. Really looking forward to our conversation this evening.
That's good. So we have a list of questions here that have come from the community and from Black professionals in the legal industry generally. And I'll just start off with the first question, Shalane. So, Sharon, you've built a remarkable career spanning over 25 years in the legal industry, from Accenture to founding the Black Council Forum. Can you tell us what first inspired you to pursue law?
Wow, 25 years sounds like a really long time. I suspect half of the people in the group are probably not even born when I started my career, because I'm that old, that ancient, unfortunately. But yeah, my interest in law, I think originally started or came through the prism of race, really, because I think as an African Caribbean child, my parents are from Jamaica. I grew up as a small child in 1970s Britain, and I learned very early on in my life that race was a differentiator, is something that would make you stand out in a crowd, and not necessarily in a positive way. And I think that's, the experience of us that have been brought up here rather than in Ghana or Nigeria or Jamaica or wherever. Very different. And I learnt, I've always felt that I needed to sort of address that. And by the time I was a teenager in the 1980s, we had the Brixton riots. And I remember listening to some of the commentary about that was quite racist, to be frank. And I started getting to be quite politically active. And then when I was about 14, I met some lawyers at a law fair, and I was just completely hooked, because for me, that sort of combination of law and advocacy meant, I could choose a career that would help shape this system. And then I was hooked from then and pursued a career in law from the age of 14.
That's really interesting, and I'm sure many of us can resonate with coming from first generation Black, British, African or Caribbean, and just being pushed into the best degree possible and that expectation. So that's totally relatable here. So I'll move on to the next question. Thank you for that, Sharon. So just looking back at your career over 25 years, as we've mentioned, what were some of the key challenges you faced as a Black woman just navigating the legal profession?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question, and I really thought deeply about it. I wanted to sort of reflect on my career. And when I was thinking about it, I actually realized that for a long time, I didn't realize that I was actually facing any challenges. I was quite oblivious to it. I didn't know that there was a different way to do this profession. I mean, in those days when I was young, it was before we had the internet, before we had social media. So I think on the whole, we were just exposed to a lot less. But even when I started working at Accenture, Anderson Consulting, as it was quite early on in my career, and it was only later on that I realised that certain colleagues of mine were being sponsored. I mean, even at that time, I didn't know what that we never had that terminology. I didn't realize that they were on a different track to me. I was kind of just putting my head down, just working. I was getting promoted every few years, but I just didn't know that there was a different way to do this profession. And I think by the time I kind of realized that not everyone had the track that I was having, there were some people that were being, taken on trips with the boss, given special projects, all kinds of things that I was just completely oblivious to. I think I was quite late into my career by the time I realized it. And then that realization made me think I need to help other people not end up where I've ended up.
Yeah.
There are things that you need to know about how to navigate this career, and it's better if you know them early on rather than learning through past experience.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you've mentioned that different colleagues on a different path and you can being completely oblivious to it. I'm sure a lot of people on the call can relate to that. And in spirit of the Black History Month theme and standing firm in your identity, how did you find strength to stand firm through the challenges?
Yeah, I don't think I did stand firm originally. I think, the ability to go and, for example, advocate for yourself is something that you gain through age and experience. And I think one of the things that gave me the confidence was understanding that technically I was a technically sharp lawyer. And when you know yourself, when you know your stuff, I should say, and you know that you're good at your job and you've got a great knowledge of whatever industry you're practicing law in, I think that gives you the confidence, that gives you the platform to stand firm and to advocate for yourself more authentically. But I think you've got to start from knowing your stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. So the Black Council Forum has become such a transformative and safe space for Black legal professionals across the UK. What inspired you to create it? And I know you touched on it previously, but just for the audience again.
Yeah, so I was involved quite a long time ago with a group called BSN, Black Solicitors Network, the City Group. I was one of the founder members, along with Paulette Maston and Michael Webster of the City Group. And through that, we had invited a speaker over called Wertham Bellamy to speak to us in the UK. And I have to say, going along and hearing him speak was life-changing for me. He's a law firm trainer, and he's one of the best coaches I've ever met, completely inspirational. And as a result of meeting him, I started going to his conference in the US. This was about 12, 13 years ago, called CYOC, Chart Your Own Course. It's a conference that was back then, it was held in Philadelphia, now it's held in Orlando every year. And he was bringing together lawyers of colour, mainly Black lawyers. But for the first time, I started meeting Black general counsels en masse. I'd never met, in all the years I'd worked in-house, I'd never met such senior Black lawyers. I started meeting a lot of Black partners all in one space, but real rainmaker partners they were just amazing. And it was just, for me, being in that space was absolutely transformative. And I started going every year and really building up a support network and an inspirational network as well. And you know how Americans are, they're just so savvy about, navigating corporate spaces.
Yeah.
And I kind of realized that had I have met these people 10 years prior or 20 years prior, I think my career trajectory would have been completely different. If nothing else, I think the expectations that I would have had for myself would have been quite different. I probably would have planned, oh, I want to be a general counsel. And then I would have thought more effectively about what do I need to do to sort of navigate myself onto that career path. And that's really why when I stopped working in 2021, I thought to myself, look, our lawyers in the UK, we need this. The African American community, particularly the legal community, is really tight and really supportive. They will spend time pouring into each other, giving each other business. And my view is that we needed something like that in the
Yeah.
UK.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the company I work for, I noticed the difference with the American lawyers and their energy alone and just willing to talk to you and help you and just be real and transparent about some of the
Yeah.
issues they faced and how to navigate that. So I definitely do agree with that point. And it's interesting that your experiences from BSN has led you to here. We just had a session this morning with Brown Jacobson, and the comments are they just didn't know someone like me from non-Russell Law Group can enter into an in-house. So it's just really interesting, and there is budget available to attend these forums and courses, but people just don't know that information. So
Yeah, I think it's important because I think particularly in the States and here now through BCF and through events that I know that your organization does, people will pour into you information that if you just relied on experience to learn it, it would take you much longer. And people can shortcut that journey for you. And it's just that ecosystem, having those inspirational role models, having that career advice, having actual work opportunities, because what happens is people begin to share either work for lawyers in private practice or opportunities, which, sometimes a lot of jobs are not advertised. So it's really important that we have our own ecosystem where we share opportunities and support each other.
definitely. Those are very important points. We'll move on to the next question. Okay. Did you have any mentors or people who inspired you during your legal journey, and how did they shape your career to date?
I think, I remember when I was quite young, sort of in my early 20s, and I was at Accenture, they actually gave me a mentor, Patricia Hewitt, who went on to become a politician. And the interesting thing about it is that I didn't know what to do with a mentor. I would just sit and sort of have general chats and didn't really understand, for one thing, that she was busy, and that two, I should have had a plan for myself and come to those meetings with an agenda. I just didn't understand how to utilize mentors, and particularly when a lot of mentors are senior lawyers and they're really, really busy. She wasn't a lawyer, but still wasn't somebody whose time I should be wasting. When I look back, I think I probably wasted quite a lot of her time. So my first thing would be, if you are going to seek out a mentor, really do your research and understand you know how to make best use of that time. I've just had a note from somebody actually saying that they were trying to get onto the meeting, but they've not been able to. So
Shalane, are you able to
it's-
put the actual team link on the group chat, like the one you sent me?
Yes, I will send. I'll put the link in the chat so anyone that can't get in. I'm I'll send it shortly. Just bear with me.
Yeah, she's not on your WhatsApp group. I think it was somebody else who saw the session being promoted. And so I'm just telling her to go on to the Teams meeting, but I will leave that with you and carry on.
No problem. I'll send it across. Just bear with me one moment.
I think somebody's just said in the chat that the link on the Eventbrite doesn't work, so I'm not really quite sure. But while you're sorting that out, I mean, I just carry on speaking about being mentored. I think in terms of people that have been huge inspirations for me, I mentioned before Werton Bellamy and his wife, Kelly Walker, who are the founders of CYOC, which is the conference in Orlando that I go to every year. They've been incredibly inspirational to me because Kelly is a global GC. She's on her 4th GC role, incredibly experienced, but still finds the time to give back, to pour into others, and to really invest in making the careers of lawyers. And I think it's amazing that people that are just so incredibly busy still want to put that ladder down for others to climb up behind them. And I think some of the information that they've shared over the years has been just life-changing. They really know their way around corporate America and they've got extensive networks. So whatever it is that you need, they can normally lay their hand on it. And I think, having good networks is really critical in your success as a lawyer.
Thank you, Sharon. I think it's very important the key point from this answer is to always give back to your community and to make time for that. And we can definitely see that you've done that in your career. I will just move on to the next question. Shalane, if you're able to click. She's gone. Okay, that's fine. So for young Black junior lawyers or students watching today, what advice would you give about standing firm in their identity while navigating a very demanding legal career?
I think it's, from an identity perspective, I think it's really important to not leave your community or, when you go into law, it's a very kind of, might I say, a middle class profession in a way. They do lots of stereotypically middle class things. So, and if we don't have that background or if that's not where we feel comfortable, that's very difficult. I always maintained my own friendship groups out of work. And I was always a very conscious person, sort of politically. So I think it's important to just, keep those bonds going with your own community, with your own friendship groups. But I think when you're in the work environment, it's important to understand that there's a game to be played. So you've got to do what you've got to do. If that means learning how to play golf, like, we did some golf clinics at BCF this year, those are places where you're going to meet certain people and you need to be able to talk that language of golf, of skiing, horse riding, whatever it might be, even if that's not where you naturally feel comfortable. If you want to compete in this game, you've always got we're already Black, right? So people don't know us. And one thing that Wharton always said to me is that you can't be Black and mysterious. So yes, be firm in your be firm in your identity, but also realize that we've got to build those bridges. People have got to understand who we are, talk about ourselves. I mean, certainly for my generation, and probably not for yours, my parents are always, quite private, and they'd be, they'd keep their work lives and their, their home life quite separate. I don't think that kind of attitude served me well. I think I would have been much better off going into work and sharing a lot more about my own culture and my own background. You don't necessarily have to get political in all of these spaces, but I think just getting people to understand who you are, what you're doing at the weekends, where you're traveling to, what your experiences are, means that people get to know you better and understand who you are as an individual person.
Yeah, I totally love that comment. Don't be black and mysterious in the workplace, and essentially just getting involved in team socials.
Yeah.
I think that's very important advice. And yeah, I definitely get involved in socials. I think it's key to getting to know your colleagues and trying to fit in, and just, yeah, people getting to know you and your culture and what you're about. So yeah, just
I think I would also just add that if you're not, and one thing I noticed, one of the mistakes that I made um, when I reflect back in my earlier career is that I did have two sets of friendship groups, and I wasn't very friendly with the people at work. And I realized that the people at work were literally going on holiday with each other. And I
yeah.
was kind of outside of those friendship groups. We were very cordial at work, but, I had a separate life outside of work into which I didn't invite any of those work colleagues. And I think as a result of that, I sometimes didn't know what was going on because some of the office gossip and some of the know-how about who's doing this, who's doing what, things that you need to know. If you're not in those friendship groups, then you will just be out of those loops.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of, one of the things that advances your career is being on the inside track, because it's in the inside track where opportunities get shared, where conversations about you are being had. So the deeper the relationships we have with our colleagues, the better. Because if we don't get those opportunities, then we can't, whether it's special projects, whether it's big deals, whatever it is, then we are not being exposed to career advancing work.
Yeah.
So I think it starts from being on the inside track of some of those relationships, because ultimately they will bring you opportunities. I remember listening to a colleague of mine years later. He'd done really, really well. And when he talked about, at one point we had the same boss. He was more senior than me, but we had the same boss. And when he talked about his experience of our boss, and when I thought, and I reflected on my experience with the same guy, it was like we worked at two different companies. He talked about being taken on trips with my boss. My boss would let him invite him into meetings where he wasn't invited, but he would say to him, "Oh, just sit on the side, just sit in the corner quietly while I'm having this meeting so that you can hear what's going on." And, he was saying he'd traveled. I didn't even realize that he'd traveled with our boss. There were so many things that I just was not a party to. And I blame them, but I also blame myself. So, yeah.
Yeah. I guess this is a question later on, but so your advice essentially, especially for this generation where there's hybrid working a few days a week, what would your advice be in terms of getting that office gossip, for example?
Yeah, I think you've got to understand how the corporate landscape works. You're not going to learn that at home. I
Yeah.
think the younger you are, the more time you need to spend in the office giving people face time. And if they're not in the office as well, so that it doesn't really have the impact, then you need to be doing those regular virtual coffees with them. But I would say be in the office as much as possible. I know it's really convenient and saves money and whatever else to stay at home, but I think we already have a disadvantage that we've got to get over, and we've got to use every tool that we can in the toolkit to get over it. Staying at home, being quiet, getting on with your work on your own is not it. It really isn't.
Um, Thank you for that, Sharon. And just in the interest of time, we'll move on to the next question.
That's my personal view, but everyone thinks differently. But that's my personal view. You got to get in front of people.
Yes.
You've got to get in front of them, because that is how when you meet people face to face, despite the fact that everything's online, a lot of people won't put certain things online, or they don't want a paper trail. But when you're in the room with them, you can learn things, you can find things out, you can ask them questions in a way that you just can't over the phone. Things that you can do at lunch, in doing drinks, these sorts of things are putting you. And I always think of the workplace as a competition. You are competing with other people all the time, whether you think, and if you don't have anyone in your team that you're competing with, you're competing with a potential external hire. So you've got to position yourself so that you are the first choice. Whenever this guy from the business rings up, or whenever this partner wants to allocate work, you have got to be the first choice, the first person that they think of. And you've got a much better chance of becoming that first choice if you are known to them. And you're going to be much more known to them if you show up in the office, and you show up in the office early.
Yeah. Yes, we won't talk about black timing, but or African time, or whatever they call it. No, I think this is an excellent piece of advice that every junior legal counsel should hear. So that's I think it's important to get a seat on the table, or create one, and get your face out there, especially to the business if you're working in a company or private law firm. Next question, please. Absolutely. So this is a question targeted at senior lawyers and those at senior leadership positions. How can they use their position and power to uplift others and keep the door open behind them so others can enter?
This is a difficult question. I've been running a group for senior Black lawyers in leadership for about 8 years now. And one of the things that they tell me is, because there's so few Black people in leadership positions, that they have a huge demand on their time. And a lot of them are struggling themselves, right? Just because you've made partner, or just because you're, a senior counsel or head of legal or whatever, life doesn't suddenly become easy. They're really, really busy. And so I think the first thing is that, like I said before, that juniors that want to have access to senior people have got to be really thoughtful about how they utilize their time, come really prepared to the meetings with goals and objectives. I think for older people or more seasoned, experienced people, I think it's really important that they are not frightened to advocate for other Black people. If they see and identify talent, Black talent in their organizations, that I think it's really important that they feel able to advocate for that talent, and don't feel, oh, I can't recommend this person because they're Black, or I can't instruct that external counsel because they're Black. People are going to feel a way about it. Nobody else feels like that. I think that we've just got to, in a way, just think about who do we know that's really talented and advocate for them, either because they're a colleague, an employee, or because they're external counsel, or because they're at the bar, for example. We've really got to think proactively, who do we know that looks like us that can do this role well, and really try and push as much work as we can their way. I think we just need to be really intentional, because I don't feel that we should expect people from other communities to support us if we're not going to do it ourselves. We've got no excuse. It is up to us. Go out and find out if you work in a certain field, if you're in-house and you deal with employment, who are the great Black employment barristers? Who are the great Black employment partners? Find out who they are. See if you can work their way. I think it's just about being really intentional. And I think also one of the things that leaders can do really well is just think proactively about connecting people every day or every week. Right, I've met somebody, and I know some general counsel like Susan McFarlane, for example, who is incredibly proactive about doing this. Whenever she meets somebody, she would always say, right, who in my network can benefit from knowing that person, and she'll actually sit down for 5 or 10 minutes and think about it and then write an email, and she'll connect you very proactively. And I just think she's an amazing person because she's one person. I know there's others that do that, but she always thinks, how can I give, not in the expectation of receiving, but how can I just connect these people so that they can support each other?
Yeah. I think that's another great, excellent piece of advice. And I think, do you think senior lawyers now, or senior persons, can do more in this generation, this current times, compared to, I would say, 40 years, 30 years ago? Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. Because when I started out in my career, there weren't any Black partners. There just were none. I don't remember there being any Black silks. And now apparently there are about 140 Black partners. So yeah, but remember, they have also got to focus on being successful in generating business, because if they don't, then the pathway will be closed. And the one thing that we can do is help them to be successful, particularly if we work in-house or we work in other practice areas, because it's their success that will generate opportunities for others. So yes, they can open doors, but the mere fact of their success will have that knock-on impact. If you've built a really strong practice as a Black person, then others will feel, oh, okay, I see these guys, they're doing really well. I'll take a chance on this person. I think success breeds success. I think, we had a discussion at BCF. It was called the Sister Circle, and it was quite interesting. It was around the theme of not all skin folk are kinfolk, and some people feeling that, other Black people can be barriers to them. And that was quite sad to hear in a way. And I think if that is true, it's something that we've really got to stop, because, if we are supportive of our community and we see things that are going wrong, things that people are maybe not quite getting, particularly more junior people, we can have those sidebar conversations. And I think a lot do. I know, one of the partners I know, for example, she gets all of the Black associates together in her firm, and she meets with them every month, right? And she tells them, look, these are the clients that are a pain in the neck. These are the partners that you've got to watch out for. She gives them some of the inside track knowledge that she has access to as a partner in her firm. And she shares that with those Black associates. But similarly, they, I hope, will take feedback from her and advice and not be defensive, because she's so much further on in her career. So I think it works both ways. But I definitely think, I don't like to hear about Black senior people that, just want to be in the workplace and pretend that they're not Black and just be invisible. That annoys me and irritates me, because everyone can see what they are. It doesn't mean they've got to be all over the latest D&I initiative, but I think it's important that they are visible to their community within the organisation.
Yeah. Very powerful statement there, Sharon. yes, I think we've got our last question. So yes, so in spirit of standing firm in power and pride, what would you like to leave? What message would you like to leave your audience, the audience today?
I think I've got a few messages. I think we have got to sort of come away from this sort of lone wolf idea. We kind of think that, we can all just be in these organizations and be the only one and still make it. And I can tell you that other communities are not operating like that in the workplace.
Yeah.
They're always thinking about how they're getting cover, who they're getting access to. So I think we've got to move to a more collective model of success where models of, that are repeatable and that are shared, models of success that work for people are shared widely in our community. And we can do that by being generous with our time, just like you two young ladies are being generous with your time now. I'm sure you've both had a full day of work today, but here you are, giving back to the community, and we really need to do that. We really need to be intentional, and because we'll get it back.
Yeah.
I said, we shouldn't give without in the expectation of receiving, but ultimately we will all rise if that's what we're doing, if we're really committed to doing that. So I also think just working on your skills, being really technically strong, which means something different if you work in-house to being in private practice or to being at the bar. But I think it's really, really important, particularly for us as Black lawyers, to be really good at what we do. And the way to do that is by expanding your network, your know-how network. Because once you know how and you're considered to be an expert in your field, that allows you to transcend certain barriers. So I think it's really important that you grow the networks within your industry. So, that you write articles, that you go to conferences, that are relevant to your field of work, that you speak at places, just get known for what you do, build your brand in what you do. I think that's really, really important. And yeah, I think it's those two things. I think it's that collective, that understanding that we have to be accountable to each other, we have to support each other, and then just thinking out of the box about how we can become the go-to person in our company, the go-to person in the industry, whatever it is. But we've got to be that standout person and seek coaching, if you need it.
Yeah.
And if you can't afford it privately, then, get it from colleagues. But, having a coach, I think, at an early stage of your career can also make all of the difference to how your career pans out.
Wow. Would you say that the view that the saying that Black people have to work 100 times more than their counterparts, do you think that's true, or just doing 200% more than their counterparts?
I think that we don't have to work harder in terms of hours, but we have to work much smarter.
Okay.
No one is going to give you the benefit of the doubt as a Black lawyer. They're just not, because there's too many negative stereotypes which are getting worse by the day, right, about us. And I think that we've just got to be very smart. Like, as I said, I've been to a few conferences this year on legal tech, and I've seen very few Black people there. And I think, wow, tech is knowing about, don't matter where you work or what field that you work in, we need to get on the forefront. We need to understand how tech is impacting our careers. We need to understand what are the latest products and what can be done so that we can, in our organizations, be that voice of the future. So we've got to be smart. We need to know what's going on. If we sit at our desks all day, just churning out whatever we've been asked to churn out, that's not being smart. We've always got to be thinking about how are we adding value? How are we that standout person? Because we just can't be on a par with all of our white colleagues. No, we've got to be smarter than them. That's my personal view. Everyone might not share it, but I think law is very competitive. And with the way that tech is going now, it's going to be increasingly more competitive. So let's think about what is our personal value proposition in my organization? How am I differentiating myself? How can I work smart? But the working twice as hard in terms of hours, no way. That's just going to burn you out. That's
Yeah.
all that's going to do. So not at all. And also, what are the relationships? If I want to work smart, have I plotted my relationship map within my organization? What are the relationships that I need to deepen,
Yeah.
right? In whether it's with partners, whether it's if you work in private practice, sometimes just knowing what areas in the firm are really making money. How do I get in with those purple people? How do I get those internal referrals of work? That's going to be through thinking smart. If you work in house, what are those business relationships that I need to make? Do I understand how my company makes money? Am I looking at their 10K reports, their submissions? So I really understand how this business is working, even if I'm really junior. I can get on the front foot so that I can talk intelligently about things. I think it's really, really important, that smart working. And if you need to, have conversations with as many people as you can about how can I do my job better? How can I work more smartly? What are some of the things that I should know or I should be trying to find out? Those are the things, that's what we need to do twice as well. And sometimes we're doing it half as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem because we don't have enough of the networks that are telling us these are the things that we need to know. These are the things that we need to be doing. If you don't have your networks in place to tell you that, then you just don't know. So you just go along, chugging along, and after a while realize that, your career is not where it should be.
Yeah, Sharon, I know we've gone over time, but you've said a lot there. So not only do we have to be an expert in our area, but we have to just be commercially sound, have that financial acumen, know the revenue, know the profits, know the business, and just, yeah, be tech savvy, attending these legal tech talk, which I think Talisha's actually joined a call, but she actually told me that this week, and she was one of those that attended the conferences.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, I honestly, I think I'm sure the audience can agree with me. We can listen to you like all day. I'm sure this is just the start of the conversation. And Sharon, just the wealth of wisdom you have shared on this call today, we are very grateful. I think,
Oh, very welcome.
definitely, I think people should watch back and listen to it. I'm definitely going to and just take the feedback forward. Yeah, so thank you very much, Sharon. I know your time is so precious, but we are truly grateful that you're here today.
Nice.
I will hand over to Shalane if there's any more questions. I don't know if we have time for
No,
questions.
there's no more questions. I just wanted to thank you so much, Sharon, for such an inspiring and insightful conversation. Thank you, everyone who joined us this evening. Apologies that we haven't had time for a Q&A, but we really appreciate you being part of tonight's discussion. It's been a real privilege to celebrate Black History Month under the theme Standing Firm in Power and Pride, and to reflect on the strength and resilience and progress within our community. A huge thank you as well to Michelle for hosting, and from all of us at BGLU, we hope you leave tonight feeling uplifted and empowered. Have a wonderful evening, everyone. If you'd like to contact us, I've left our contact details on the screen. You can contact me directly on LinkedIn. And our next BGLU event will be in November the 19th, and it will be BGLU presents tips and tricks with the SRA for the SQE. So that will be an unmissable one, I think. But thank you so much, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.